If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
As usual, Ben Leber's appearance on the Bumper to Bumper program brought to you by our good friends at the Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. And Leber will be joining us here shortly via the Connecticut Water Systems Hotline. If you have questions for him, don't hesitate. Don't be bashful. Hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line at 64686. It is, of course, the ultimate Lions Week. We've never had a Lions Week quite like this. We've never had anything, I think, approaching a final regular season game like this with as much as seems to be at stake. And it's also part of the conversation we'll get into with Johnny Athletic. He's going to join probably about 5:30 or so. We'll talk some Wolves with him as well. Nacho, we've never had a Lions Week like this, have we? I mean, this is sort of uncharted water.
I know. Isn't it fun?
Yes, 100%.
Nobody ever really says uncharted waters is fun because,
You're right.
By the name of the phrase, it's uncharted. But this is fun.
Oh, it's beyond. I think it's you look at, again, the stakes are obvious here. It just feels so different between being a top seed, 2 games at home to get to the bowl, and a 5 seed, for God's sake, having to play probably all your games on the road as well. I mean, it's not unprecedented that you could have, a games late decide who's going to win a division. But it's very unusual, I think. Well, it's unprecedented, I guess, for teams with these winning percentages to play this late in the season. I don't think I think that's very, very rarely happened, if ever, in league history. So if you're a player, here's what's weird, though. Somebody's going to lose, right? Well, I guess technically there could be a tie, but likely somebody's going to lose this game, and they're still going to be in the playoffs with a terrific record. How do you as a player reconcile all that and not have it be this sort of incredible letdown, even though you're already rewarded, you're already going to be in the postseason, given the stakes seem to be so high?
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly one of my concerns. I mean, I don't want to think about the loss, but I'm, trying to be realistic of like what that would look like and feel like. And, we're all kind of playing the game when it comes to seeding. But with that becomes the emotional challenge of, man, you're going to put so much into this week. Like this week is going to feel like a true, not just a playoff game, but for a lot of people and the players, it's going to feel like a championship game, like a true, maybe NFC championship game. And whoever loses, there's a possibility that they may have to play on Saturday, the way everything kind of works out. So if you've got to go on the road, fly out on a Friday and play on a Saturday, and then prep for a real playoff game in between, I think that's going to be very, very difficult for whatever team loses this game. And, God forbid you have a first-round exit just because you put so much into this one game.
Why did the Vikings win yesterday?
I think that they really out-schemed and out-coached the Green Bay Packers, and they rose up to the challenge. It looked like to me, and I'm trying to say this with all due respect, I mean, it looked like the Packers flinched a lot of times. And I don't know if they were ready for what we brought. And that was shocking to me. I was very nervous about this game just because of the way the Packers have been playing.
I agree.
They seem to get hot like they did last year towards the end of the season. I did not like how good their 4-man rush was defensively and how they could play so much coverage and still get pressure on the quarterback. I mean, there's a lot of things. They do a lot of good things, and not to overlook all the good things that we do, but, I was trying to give them the utmost respect. And they came out in the game, and it looked like, to me, early on, Jordan Love looked skittish.
Mm-hmm.
He looked like the second that we disrupted their passing routes, he was immediately on his back foot. He was immediately looking to scan and kind of get out of the way. I mean, he really was, you could tell our pass rush was on his mind and our blitz package was on his mind. And that surprised me. And then, the way that we sort of dismantled and picked apart their secondary, that was shocking as well.
So, one of the things I talked to much earlier with Cam Bynum about was an acknowledgement that, quite frankly, LaFleur made after the game, which was the Vikings are not a team generally that cover man-to-man a lot this season. They have not. This game, they approached 50%. And according to the stuff I've read, this was a big emphasis at the beginning of the week from B-Flow, that he was challenging his team and his largely, obviously, defensive backs and linebackers to a degree. We're covering man-to-man. This is going to be a big part of what we do. LaFleur admitted after the game, apparently, that he didn't see it coming and that it took him too long to adjust to it. And for the better part, as you said, of 3 quarters, the vaunted Green Bay passing offense did not exist.
Yeah, and it surprised me too. And I'm fine to get corrected on this. I think it was the Atlanta game. We started to see a little bit more man coverage, and didn't know if that was just something that was special to that one game, or if it was something that, like, okay, we're going to build on this. If we're getting ready, if we're going to put together a playoff run as a defense, we have to do a little bit more. And we have to challenge these receivers a little bit more, and we have to give our pass rush a little bit more time because, as everybody knows, we were getting killed.
Yeah.
Over the middle, a lot of soft zones. We blitzed so much. We sacrificed a lot of coverage guys, and we were getting picked apart. And I think it was that game that we even heard from one of the guys in the locker room about, like, yeah, we played a little bit more man coverage today. And that got me thinking, like, man, are we going to see more of that? And we certainly saw a bunch of it. I noticed a bunch of it a lot on third down early in the game. I didn't know the stat that you just threw out, that it came to close to 50%. But it had that feeling to me that we were rolling up on the line of scrimmage and we were going to challenge these receivers. And I saw it a bunch yesterday, and I guess the stats showed that.
So a couple texters are asking for, what the answer is for the way to finish defensively. Because overall, again, I thought they played well enough defensively to win the game. Obviously, it ended up being closer than we thought it was going to be. But people want everything, and they go, okay, well, is there something we can do to avoid, what seemed to take place late, where the Packers did get something going in their offense, and certainly from their passing game late. Let me get you the direct text. What does the defense need to do better to close out teams? The secondary looks tired late in the game. That's from Tom in Sioux Falls. What do you think?
Well, I'll even add on to what Tom was saying. I think that our pass rush got tired. And I know that we rotate those guys around, but that's hard work, man. When you're out there trying to go one-on-one, run some stunts, it's a lot to push on these big guys and try to get to the quarterback all game long. And they did a decent job. I mean, they didn't get a lot of pressure, but it's still a lot of work. And we lost Pat Jones. I know it's just one guy, but we just lack an overall pass rushing depth on our defensive front. And then you couple that with I agree with him. When we run at the end of it, the totality of so much man coverage, that's exhausting,
right.
Chasing these guys all over the field. So yeah, I think maybe a little bit more working in some zone and being a little bit more choosy about when we run man coverage. That'll help the secondary out. But I think finding some semblance of a true 2 lines of pass rushers will really help out in the fourth quarter.
It's worth noting, by the way, that Aaron Jones is doing well. He did not play late in the game with a quad issue, and they're saying that, I think, turns out that all the signs are good, I guess I should say, that he's going to be He's going to be able to practice all week and should not be affected. That's worthy of mention. And who did you mention who got hurt?
Pat Jones.
Pat Jones. I think even the prognosis, according to the head coach today, was surprisingly good for him as well, because I know there was a lot of concern coming out of that game. That's a story that we'll watch over the course of this very, very special Lions week. I set this up before you came on the broadcast a little bit because I want to get your view of it. You know who Mark Tauscher is, right? The former Green Bay Packer who now does a lot of media stuff for the Packers. And I don't know if you happen to hear the soundbite or watch it, but after the game, he had some strong things to say about what he viewed as the contrast between the two coaches. The direct quote from Tauscher, "I thought Kevin O'Connell ate LaFleur's lunch today." Now, I don't know how specific he got, whether he meant that schematically, but he did also talk about emotionally. And here's what he offered up, and I'm curious to get your view because you, again, used to play, as he did. And Tauscher's theory is that as much as everybody loves the fiery nature of Matt LaFleur, that he thinks on the sidelines his demeanor works against his own team, that LaFleur gets too agitated, he seems to get too pissed off when something doesn't go right, and there's almost a ranting aspect to it, and that players sometimes pick up that cue, and that if the Packers played tight, which is what LaFleur after the game suggested, that maybe that's some of the reason. And he contrasted that with O'Connell, who obviously is very calm on the sidelines. He's usually got that wry grin on his face no matter what happens. And he certainly rarely, if ever, you can speak to this better than me, loses his mind. So is this amateur psychology, even from an ex-player? Or as an ex-player, do you buy the notion that teams can sometimes take a cue from the approach, the demeanor, that the sense of calm that even in difficult times a head coach might exude?
See, I'm guessing Tausch knows more about what's going on the day-to-day versus what we see and what he's commenting on game day. If it's a game day attitude and that's kind of where it lives and dies, then I don't think that's a problem. We don't have to look very far back in our Vikings organization to see what it looks like with Mike Zimmer,
right,
where you run a daily operation where you feel like you can't make mistakes. And then every mistake is magnified almost to the point of like a personal level where it goes beyond coaching. And then you do start to lose players. Maybe that's what he's talking about. It could be. I have never heard that. But definitely, if he's taken his game day attitude and it's sort of like that in practices and that's how he runs everything and everything's very uptight, then certainly, that can reverberate across the organization, across the players, their mood, their energy, playing tight, all those things. That's certainly true. But I also know that when things aren't going your way, it's easy to sort of pick at some of those things. And when LaFleur himself is saying that they didn't, as a coaching staff, adjust to what B-Flow is doing, well, demeanor and attitude are not. I mean, you're basically admitting you got out coached.
Yeah.
So, you can put all that psychological stuff aside, and when you get out coached and you don't even put your guys in the right position to make plays, well, there's your answer.
Nacho Leber is with us, brought to you by Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. Your Sierra Nevada Hop Splash Player of the Game is?
Well, I know this guy had a bunch of plays, had a bunch of catches, but I just sort of love what Jordan Addison is doing when he's not getting the football. And so I want to give the Hop Splash Player of the Game to him because there's been an evolution to his game. There's been a grit and a toughness that he's sort of developed. And it really seems to stem from the whole free three thing where people are misconstruing, although I still think that there might be something more behind it, but he's kind of rallied behind this whole free three thing. And he's kind of got an edge to him now. And you watch him go out there and run block, and this dude's getting after it. And this guy's like, he is doing everything he can, even when he's not supposed to be the primary target. And even on specific run plays, and quick screenplays. Like, he is out there on the forefront as a primary blocker, and he's getting after it like a little dirt dog. So
good selection.
I love this newfound Jordan Addison that we've got.
Did you think Akers was going to be able to bring in that last pass?
No. I mean, I guess it all happened so fast. I didn't realize that it was delivered, so low and behind. I mean, he was trying to put some arc on it over the defender, and until it actually happened, I was like, oh my gosh, that's an unbelievable catch in this moment. So yeah, and then I obviously saw it on the replay on the jumbotron, like that, much closer to the ground than I initially thought. So, and then I just maybe 15 minutes ago just saw the mic'd up segment with KOC talking about how he was. Did you see that yet?
I did. It was good.
Yeah. And just how, in the moment, just saying how great of a play it was. I mean, he recognized it right away, like what it meant. So yeah, Akers just he steps in and just does his job, man. Yeah,
I got to give him credit. I was kind of bored with when we got him the second time. I go, what are we doing? But again, it's not like he's been a star, but he's made some plays. And that was a hard-ass play. That I think he made that look easier than it really was, because you got a footing problem. That's the other thing I thought if the footing doesn't hold on you, you just might slip, and then you lose a chance to get under the ball, your hand under the ball the way he did. That was a very that was an outstanding play for sure. Let me ask you a quarterback question. Is Sam Darnold right now playing better than Kirk Cousins was playing 2 years ago when the Vikings made the postseason?
Yes, he is. And look, I was pro Kirk, and I think that he's playing at a level more than he was when Kirk got hurt. Because there was that 5-game stretch right up to that Green Bay game where he tore his Achilles that everybody was like, man, we got to put this guy on the MVP radar. Like, he is playing that well. I think the athleticism is what does it for me. And I know we all know that was, that's not Kirk's strength. And it was definitely a detriment at times. A lot of times where his pocket movement, the lack of pocket movement, the lack of being able to run outside the pocket and across the line of scrimmage, that definitely hampered him. But you're watching Sam Darnold make a lot of the same throws with the same arm strength and accuracy, plus he can actually run around in his subtle slippery movements that he makes in the pocket. It's been phenomenal. He's been so fun to watch. So yeah, I think he's playing better than Kirk. And
as we've pointed out a couple times during this show, and as you well know, he has the one bad pick yesterday that does seem to open the door, but it's what he did after that, right? The first drive after the Packers cut the lead, he goes 5 for 5 for 54 yards, touchdown to Akers. In fact, the next drive, he throws well, too. That included, I think, a 37-yarder to JJ. That's the drive where it ended in a missed field goal. On those two drives, 6 for 7 for 92. There was no hesitation. There was no, I'm double clutching. There was no uncertainty, like I'm a little bit scared. To me, that's how you evaluate quarterbacks, right? They're all going to make stupid plays, right? Even great ones. It's, all right, how do you rebound from it? And obviously O'Connell is also very good about saying I'm not conceding anything. I'm not going to start handing the ball off here. We do what we do. And to me, that was the best moment or stretch for Darnold, was how he rebounded from a pretty bad interception.
Yeah, and I'll even defend him a little bit on the interception too. I mean, that's actually a really good drop by Valentine. I mean, he played it exactly how you're supposed to play it. He sort of, he has flat coverage. Now he's supposed to play deep to short, but if you feel like you can still make it to that deep seven shot, then you can sort of bait the quarterback, and that's kind of what happened in that bang bang scenario. He saw the corner was sitting hard down the flat, thought he had the window, put some air on it, and Valentine did a good job of just keeping his eyes on the quarterback and drifted back and picked it off. I mean, it was sort of a textbook drop by the corner, and that's going to happen. I mean, of all the interceptions that we've seen him throw and other quarterbacks throw, where you're definitely thinking like, what are you doing? Like, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, that one I was like, oh, I see exactly what you thought was going to happen. And unfortunately, the guy just made a great defensive play. But I'm with you. I mean, the way that he plays with no fear, you talk about the no hesitation, all season long, he just has this no fear attitude of just letting it go. And I can't wait to talk to him and maybe talk, KOC opens up and we hear from a lot of the offensive staff and Josh McCown and all this stuff when everything, the season's over, we give everybody a month or two and just reevaluate.
You mean after the Super Bowl?
Where'd the fearlessness come from? Has it always been a part of him?
Yeah.
Or did Sam feel like there was like this pressure taken off of him because he's bounced around a little bit? Like he's got nothing to lose. I mean, it's amazing what he's done psychologically.
Yeah, and I don't think you're going to hear. Maybe you're never going to hear it from Darnold himself because everybody wants him to explode, right? And he's just not going to do that and go bleep you and you doubted me and all. He's just not going to do any of that. But maybe after this thing all ends, maybe in the Super Bowl, who knows? Maybe he will open up a little bit because I know he's got to have some real emotion there somewhere. Is Dan Campbell an idiot if he follows through with what I think he's vowed he's going to do tonight in Santa Clara, play all of his regulars in a game that has absolutely no significance? Well, I shouldn't say none. I guess if there was a tie, there'd be significance in terms of, having to still beat the Vikings or being able to beat the Vikings next week to get home field. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I don't think it makes it, there's not a competitive advantage by doing this. And that to me is what it's all about. I think that statistically, probability wise, all that stuff, you give yourself the best chance to beat the Minnesota Vikings next Sunday if you don't play your starters. And I know that depth wise, they're going to have to play some guys defensively. That's just the nature of their situation. But offensively, I understand what he's saying. If I was a coach, I'd be a little paranoid too about guys knowing on a Tuesday, Wednesday of the preparation week that they're not going to play. Just how that sort of trickles down to the rest of the team about how you're just kind of taking time off and you're not mentally engaged and all this other stuff. So I understand the psychology behind it, but I really hope that after one quarter of this game tonight, he pulls all of his relevant starters and says, like, you guys are done. I saw what I needed to see when it comes to preparation to get ready for this game. I know it's not exactly fair to the backups. They didn't get all the reps for this game, but this game does not matter. I need to take care of my guys, keep them healthy, get them healthier, and get them mentally right for next Sunday night. All
right, let's finish with this because I don't know that you and I are going to have a chance to talk before the game itself. Like I said, this is probably the most anticipated final game of regular season that we can remember, right? I mean, with the stakes, the difference we all know between a 1 seed and a 5 seed, home and road, the whole bit. What does your gut tell you? Because I think nationally, I predicted earlier today that we're going to be surprised at the percentage of people nationally who pick the Vikings to win this game. I think that's what started. It doesn't mean they're going to win, but I do think there's going to be a greater and greater vibe because of the Lions injuries and because of I think a growing belief that Minnesota is pretty legit here. What does your gut tell you about Sunday night?
I mean, obviously we're coming off an emotional win. My gut still tells me that we win this game. There's something special about this group, and there's an intangible in there that it's hard to describe, and I think we all sort of feel it. But I think that obviously it's going to be a tough game, and I think it's going to come down to something that we've already proven already this season, that we have to handle some adversity defensively. Just understand that even though we might be showing a little bit more man, we might give them a different wrinkle that they haven't seen before. There's going to be some nuance to the chess match that this is too good of an offense to just completely shut down. So can you weather the storm for 4 quarters and stay positive and not get too down on yourself that they are probably going to put the ball in the end zone 4 times, at least. And hopefully the offense is right there with them to keep you in it. But I think just keeping positive the whole time, knowing that we're a good enough team. We're just as good as these guys. We proved it the last time that we played. So if we can do that and stay resilient, which we've done all season long, I think we're going to pull this thing off.
Unnamed big-time pro football executive in an interesting piece in The Athletic, and apparently they've got 3 execs, anonymous, that they've been quoting really through the latter part of the season. This one unidentified exec says this: if Detroit is going to live in the Tampa world of split safety zone coverage, which they do a good job with, the Minnesota skill with Aaron Jones and those guys will be enough, especially with O'Connell doing a good job keeping the game safe for Sam Darnold. The opinion there is that Detroit is not going to be able, and that Detroit can't necessarily go man with all the options at receiver and tight end that the Vikings have, and that this makes it a very challenging matchup for the Lions. Do you agree?
Oh, 100%. They're lacking pass rush. They don't have the guys across the boards in the back 7 to match up with our guys when it comes to man coverage. I mean, we pretty much have the upper hand when it comes to every single matchup that you see, and that includes running backs out of the backfield, both of our tight ends against their linebackers. So yeah, that's why I think if defensively we're going to give up some plays because they're a high-powered offense as well. I have all confidence that our offense is going to do the same thing to their defense. And you look at the touchdown to Naylor yesterday. That was a too high safety look, and you now manipulate those safeties with JJ on the in-cutting route. And so even if those safeties are being disciplined and they don't let Naylor over the top, well, all right, you got an 18-yard dig by Justin that's uncovered. And so we have options. We're going to obviously have a plan for what they do. And the fact that we can pretty much trust that our offensive line is going to give Sam the time, we should be able to pick apart these guys and just be patient with it. Don't always look for the deep shot the whole time and the big play and the explosive play. Just wear these guys out mentally and physically. And if we can do that, man, this is going to be a really, really fun game to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun week. It really is. The whole week is well, even going into the Packer game as well. I was saying that, people always talk about the good old days. These are the good old days. This is historic territory. No matter what happens, there's still no guarantee, right, of how this is going to go. But 20, 30 years from now, we're going to look back on this, I think, just in terms of the unusual nature of these sorts of records we've talked about, all within the same division. And now a game between the teams with winning percentages that have never been as good as these two. This is good stuff, man. This is stuff worth having fun with, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember, obviously it wasn't too long ago in KOC's first year. We're like, oh my gosh, we just find magic in a bottle with this whole thing. But this does feel different. And for every fan base that's out there, for whatever team you're cheering for, when you can basically look at all of December and say, this is appointment TV to watch this team. I mean, that's special. That doesn't happen very often. And, we've been talking about it all year long. Like, everybody just live in the moment. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's enjoy exactly the ride that we're on. Just be present with this whole thing, because it is really fun. It is really fun to have a playoff atmosphere like we had yesterday. It's going to bleed into a true playoff atmosphere at Ford Field,
it's gonna be nuts.
Which then is going to bleed into, no matter what, a real playoff atmosphere a week or maybe 2 weeks later on. So it's what we all sign up for when we become football fans.
Great stuff as always, Ben. Have fun in the Motor City. We'll talk next week.
All right, thanks, man.
Thanks, man.
Week.
Ben Leber. Hey, same to you. Happy New Year to Ben and all of his fine brood as well. Johnny Athletic, I know, is going to join us at the bottom of the hour. There will be some Vikings-Packers discussion, Vikings-Lions previewing, and also some Minnesota Timberwolves to discuss. And we'll keep an eye on a couple of other stories, including Iowa Hawkeyes couldn't get it done. Damn, what a loss. They can't hold on in the Music City Bowl. It's another Big Ten set.
Join the Power Trips with Zach Halverson for a World Juniors watch party. Drop into Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub this Saturday at 2:30 p.m. to catch the third place game with Halvey. We'll have free appetizers during the first period, drink specials, and tons of prizes, including tickets for next year's World Juniors and a signed Lou Nanny jersey. Get the full details now at KFAN.com. Keyword calendar.
There are a number of people texting stating what I think is an understandable concern regarding what the losing team is going to have to do. Most likely, the losing team being the loser of Vikings-Lions last regular season game of the season. You drop from a top seed to a 5, and then have to go to, it could be Tampa Bay. There could be a couple of other options as well. And there's a concern that, man, I mean, that's scary. And I agree. I don't think you can obviously not look at it as, oh my God, we're conceding before we go. In fact, if you're a good enough team, you say, well, yeah, it's unfair that we're on the road, but we still have to be able to weather that storm. And we've been a better, more consistent team than them over the course of the season. So therefore you have to take care of business. But it is rare to see such a dramatic contrast between, in this particular year, a 1 seed in a wide open conference without the 49ers being a factor, because they have been the constant the last half decade, and being a 5 seed and going from having to win 2 games at home, potentially, to winning 3 on the road to get to the Super Bowl. It is extremely daunting. And to that extent, you could say, well, are the Vikings... There's no guarantee that the Vikings, if they win on Sunday night, are going to get to the Super Bowl, right? There's no guarantee. We all know that. But is it literally the difference between getting to the Super Bowl and not? I think fairly logically, the answer is yes. I mean, it really is. The idea that even if you like this club, that they're going to win 3 games on the road, it's not unprecedented, but it hasn't happened very often. In fact, let me see if I got the stats in front of me here.
So the Giants, the last one that did that?
Well, here's what I have. That if you go back to the 2013-19 seasons when the top 2 seeds in each conference had byes, 7 consecutive number 1 or number 2 seeds won the bowl after those seasons. Second seeds lost bye privileges after the 2020 regular season when the NFL added a 7th playoff entrant, right? Since then, Brady's 2020 Bucks remain the only wild card team to win it all. They are, in fact, the only wild card team since the 2011 season to even reach the Super Bowl. So that speaks for itself right there. Doesn't guarantee you're going to get to the bowl, but the gap is so dramatic, and it feels worse this year because the loser of this game will have to go on the road with one of the best records in the league. And you just say, well, that doesn't add up. And then you say, well, yeah, it's going to get funky, and that means maybe, the Tampa Bay QB, another Carolina reject, just like our guy Sam Darnold, is going to throw 5 touchdown passes against us, and we're going to lose to Tampa Bay and watch that stupid ship, that cannon, sound off every time that he throws another touchdown pass. So I think it is that dramatic. And you could also argue, if you're a team without playoff equity, which the Vikings don't have much right now, as good as this season has been, right? Darnold's got none.
Right.
Really, very few players on this team have much playoff equity. You say all the more reason to give yourself the built-in advantage of being at home. It has the extra cushion that might make the difference that you need because you don't have 2 or 3 years of playoff success to fall back on. Right?
Well, and to speak further to that, I think it's an underrated aspect. The U.S. Bank Stadium is the new 12th man.
It has been.
Because Seattle doesn't have that title anymore after Green Bay fans took over there a couple weeks ago. We see on a consistent and frequent basis enough that you can see that it's not a fluke, that teams are consistently discombobulated, unable to communicate, and end up getting stupid out of character penalties when they're playing,
not lining up in the right place on the line of scrimmage,
exactly.
Negating a first down. Yeah,
exactly. So that's I think U.S. Bank Stadium specifically is a significant advantage, and you don't want to go to Tampa Bay right now, anyways, because I think over the last month and a half or so, they have the best offense in the NFL.
Yeah, Mayfield's been ridiculous. I mean, he really had. Now he is still capable of throwing the occasional pick.
For sure.
But what do you have? I think this last game he had five more touchdown passes.
Tied a career high with 5 more touchdown passes.
It's unbelievable.
And you just don't want the story of possibly going to Atlanta and facing off against Kirk Cousins' replacement, and then possibly losing to him a couple weeks after you just blew him out of the water. I mean, great story if you're on the Falcons side. It's an absolute nightmare if you're on the Vikings side.
It turns from this fantasy story to an absolute dead-ass nightmare.
Yeah.
Overnight, you're 100%. And in 1 week, it's over.
Right.
After all of this, that's it. So you don't want to, you just don't want to have to mess with that. On the other hand, as Leber said, you can't curl up in the fetal position if you lose. That's the hard part emotionally about putting so much into this game because so much is at stake. You still have to find a way, if you lose, to say, all right, we're still going and we still have to figure this thing out. But I guess you take that one step at a time and you wait until you have to get there. And the Vikings have to hope that they will not get there. Somebody who's bitter that I suggested the Vikings have a chance to steal the division. They're saying that's awfully negative of me. Steal in the sense that the Lions have been at the top for most of the season, right? That's all. It doesn't mean it's illegal. It doesn't mean it would be fluky. People have to calm down a little bit on how they interpret things. It's not necessarily any sort of shot at the club. And my point early, by the way, was the fact that the Lions are playing a day later than the Vikings, right? They're playing tonight. They're playing in the West Coast. So they have to travel all the way home because somebody said, well, you're making it sound like the Lions are playing this game at home. No, I'm saying they have to go back home, but they have to make a long trip across the country where meanwhile, the Vikings' last game was, guess what? Here, no travel involved. We get the extra day. Is that the difference between winning or losing? Probably not. But, the analytics seem to indicate sometimes that could add a little bit of an advantage on your side, especially for a team that is injury ravaged as the Lions have been. Bottom of the hour pause. Johnny Athletic on Vikings and his opinion on their prospects. And maybe early, because there have been so much football talk today, we will get into the Minnesota Timberwolves, who won their, third in a row last night. He was there for that game as well and wrote about a pretty crucial player and whether that player maybe is figuring some stuff out and finally letting go of where he has been to appreciate where he is now. Stay tuned. Well, there's a lot of flexing going on yesterday afternoon and evening among several of the media jackals, most notably our next guest, John Athletic. In fact, did you find the John Athletic Open? Or should we, to make it official and so his feelings don't get hurt, let's go ahead and play it, man.
It's time for Johnny Athletic, Johnny Athletic, Johnny Athletic. And he's on with Dan Barreiro right now.
And Johnny clearly was in a flexing mood yesterday because he had apparently predicted via one of those muses he does every Friday before the NFL weekend that the Vikings would beat the Packers by 2 points, and he was only off in the terms of the score, I think, by 1. He wanted to make sure people knew that. And he also wanted to let people know that he's so versatile and so, I guess, blue collar that he attended the Vikings game and then walked all the way across town to Target Center for the Wolves game against the San Antonio Spurs. Davey, did I cover that about right?
Yeah, I think you hit the high notes, Dan. Yeah, I try to, inspire people. I try to, I know you, I think, have 2 subscriptions to The Athletic, so I want to give you 2 stories.
That's true.
One each on the Vikings and on the Timberwolves. I want to make sure you're getting your money's worth. I'm walking among the people on the streets of downtown Minneapolis, just soaking up the atmosphere, being connected to this community like I am. I'm serving the people by doing what I did yesterday, Dan.
It sounded like you were desperately hoping somebody would give you a ride so that you didn't have to walk the rest of the way to Target Center. Did somebody take you up on that? Did they recognize you?
Yeah, no one did, Dan, and it reminded me of Brad Childress's famous saying about Minnesotans. They'll give you, what do they say? They'll give you directions anywhere but their house.
Yeah, that's it.
So thanks a lot for nothing, I guess, as I walked. Just all I got was a couple snarky comments in my tweet, because I just said, hey, I'm out here. If you see a good-looking reporter walking the streets, pick him up. And they said, oh, you walking with Katie Storm? And I just like, come on now. Like,
that's not cool.
What's going on here? That was unnecessary shot.
Yeah,
diminishing me.
That was a little bit aggressive, but to a certain extent, I think you kind of knew it was likely coming once you put your name out there to the whole thing. I do want to start, because we talked a lot of Vikings-Packers today, and we will with you eventually, and even Lions game coming up. I do want to start with the Wolves. You wrote about DiVincenzo, and it's, I guess, everybody around the Wolves, I think, is looking for answers, right, to what's been kind of a meandering 500 start. There have been a couple of encouraging stretches, and then they seem to go back in the wrong direction. Then we have another come-to-Jesus meeting in which Anthony Edwards is swearing a lot, in this case not for happy reasons, and talking about we've got no identity beyond me shooting and Randall shooting, etc. So the way out is pretty clear. One is figuring out a role that is consistent and suitable for Randall, at least before the Wolves trade him, before the deadline. And the other is, can you get DiVincenzo to that place that they identified as him being, the guy they thought they were acquiring? So he spoke a lot, I know, to you last night. And really, I thought one of the most enlightening quotes you got was from Rudy Gobert on this issue. The question of the player being traded, a good player being traded, letting go of whatever disappointment he might have that he's not in that place anymore.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting to listen to both Dante and Rudy talk about this, because Rudy went through kind of similar situation, being traded from Utah to Minnesota, and so he knows it kind of walks in Dante's shoes a little bit. I think it was slightly different because Rudy sort of, I think, read the writing on the wall and was sort of expecting some kind of a move to be done with him. Dante did not see it coming at all with the Knicks. And so I think that what Rudy said in the locker room, and what prompted me to kind of go chase down Dante afterward to get a little more comment on him from, is that Rudy said he could kind of tell that Dante was holding on to some frustration or some kind of just maybe some hurt feelings about being dealt from the Knicks. And, I don't think, and in talking with Dante DiVincenzo as well, I don't think it's ever been about he didn't want to be in Minnesota. I don't think it's ever been about, the coaches, the teammates, the city, anything like that. But what you have to sort of remember about DiVincenzo's experience in New York was that he started the last 73 games for that team. He played 37 minutes a night in the playoffs. His last experience in Knicks uniform was scoring 39 points in Game 7 in Madison Square Garden in a loss to the Pacers, and just being such a central figure and being saluted by those fans. And I think there was something really intoxicating about that in the back of his mind, even as he left there abruptly, I don't think he ever got that adoration, out of his eardrums. And I think, you're a pro athlete, you're in that situation. I can understand that. And so, this early part of the season, while, as he's transitioned to a bench role with the Timberwolves, as the Wolves have struggled out of the gates, I think that he just did not look settled. And he looked, and Dante said, I had to let it go. I had to just forget about where I was and embrace where I am. And I think he's starting to do that a little bit more here in the last 6 to 10 games.
He played, was it the last 18 minutes of the game?
Yeah, I believe so. 17 and a half, 18, 17 and a half, 18. There, yep.
How often has he finished games since he's been here?
Yeah, not much at all, Dan. And so he did the same. Chris Finch did the same thing with him in Houston. He played really well in that win, in the comeback win. And I think he played the final 15 or 16 minutes of that game as well. And he was just playing so well that Finch rode him, and he did it again last night. But to your point, it hasn't happened very often. And I think that one of the things that kind of brings out better play in Dante DiVincenzo is that extended run, that show of faith from the coach. And, he was playing shorter minutes. Maybe he was sitting and Finch was going with more Mike Conley. And I think that it was harder for him to find a rhythm. And you watch him play these last several games and he looks like a different player. I mean, he is demonstrative. He is expressing himself. He is having fun, but he's also making plays. He's playing more freely. And because of that, he is earning those minutes at the end of games. And I think it's going to be something that you see Finch stick with because he just brings a different element than Mike Conley does right now at that spot.
Yeah, that's probably going to be the reality. And I've said it for weeks that if you're going to make this deal work and feel better about it again, he's the key to it. At some point, Randall kind of is who he is, and you try to sort of, work through all those machinations. But the best player in the deal is in New York. Karl Anthony Towns is the best player in this deal. You might be able to live with it if you get from DiVincenzo the guy they thought they were getting and the guy who played so well on both ends for much of the season for New York. That's the only way you change this calculus, right? Is that he becomes not once a week, but he becomes a guy that, 80 to 90% of the time is the player that we remember from last year.
Yeah, I totally agree, Dan. He was the one that got this deal done. I mean, I reported it when the deal first went down. The Knicks had been trying for a very long time to engage the Wolves on any kind of Karl Anthony Towns trade talk, and they were rebuffed or just summarily dismissed with some of their ridiculous offers. And it wasn't until Dante DiVincenzo was put on the table that it opened the door for a deal to get done. So that's how highly the Timberwolves do think of DiVincenzo. And to your point, Dan, about the both ends, I mean, it is nice that he is shooting well from three now, and that I think he's 50% in the last 6 games from three at high volume. That's great. That certainly provides a dimension that they don't have otherwise. But really what tells you that this might be more than just a hot shooting streak is the play that he is making, running down the court to break up a pass that was going to Victor Wembanyama to take away a layup in transition, diving on the floor for loose balls, hitting Gobert with pocket passes on pick and roll to get him dunks, throwing lobs, doing those other things that just round out his game, because he is so much more than just a spot up shooter. And he can bring all sorts of different elements to the equation when his game is clicking. And it is finally clicking right now, at least I would say, in the last 6 to 8 games here.
Stay tuned. A lot yet to be played out, but at least some encouraging signs. What are we? Is it 9-4 in our last 13? Is that
9-4?
Yeah.
And all 9 of those wins, Dan, against teams above 500. So they're not beating up on cupcakes. They're beating good teams and winning games late and pulling out tough games. And so there's definitely a glimmer of hope in kind of the larger picture when you look at, even if that 3-game losing streak was really, really ugly, for sure.
You started this your marathon yesterday at the People's Stadium, watching the Vikings take care of business against Green Bay in a game that ended up being a little bit more dramatic than I thought it was going to be, based on the Vikings' domination. Is it hyperbole to suggest that, given the differences that we all understand between winning and losing this game, from a seeding standpoint and where you're playing standpoint, that Sunday night represents the Vikings Super Bowl?
You know what? I took a little heat for this, Dan, because I said it in kind of our little preview section of the Packer game. There's no question that this game, and if they were to win, the pathway is so much easier, and it is such a better position for them to be in, to have to win 2 games at home versus go on the road for 3 games. Absolutely, it's an enormous game. There's a lot at stake. They should throw everything they have at the Lions and try and come out with a win, because I think it is, and it would give them just a huge leg up and an ability to go and get back to the Super Bowl for the first time in my lifetime. But I think I for one, Dan, look at the way that this NFC is, and I would not rule out them being able to go on the road and win 3 games. There's not a team in this conference that just scares me to the point where, like, well, you can't beat them on the road. There's no way. Not this team. I think the Vikings could absolutely do it. I also think they could lose at home to any of these games. That's what the parity is in this conference. But yeah, so I think, winning it would be an enormous step in the right direction for them. But I still don't think that losing it means it's all over for this club. I think that they could get on the road and get hot and win a bunch of games and still come out of the NFC.
You're also taking some heat for suggesting that if Darnold has another exemplary game, and it's going to be obviously the most watched game to end a season probably ever for all the obvious reasons. There hasn't been a game like this with this much at stake at the end of the year. It's just a bonanza for NBC that ends up winning the battle for positioning to get this game, that Darnold might further put himself into the legitimate most valuable player discussion. Do you want to defend it, or do you want to back away from it today?
Well, I want to defend it. Do you think I'm crazy, Dan? Because let's look at the numbers. First of all, just the numbers that Sam Darnold has put up, especially over these last 7-8 games. They are absolutely on par with anything any other passer is doing in the league. And if he goes into Detroit, let's say he goes into Detroit on Sunday Night Football with the whole world watching and throws for 325 yards and 3 touchdowns or 4 TDs, and they win, either a tight game or they win even going away against a banged-up defense, that's not out of the realm of possibility. If he goes there and lights it up on Sunday Night Football and the Vikings have won 10 straight games to get to the number 1 seed in the NFC, this team that nobody believed in at the start of the season, myself included, and if he's the one that orchestrates this, am I crazy for saying he shouldn't be at least in the top 3 with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson?
You are crazy, but for that reason. Yeah, on that point, I would agree with you totally. Yeah, I think now whether he would win it or not, we can have that argument.
Right.
I think you're at this point. There are several people that I can't be offended by if any of them win it, to be honest with you, because they've all been exemplary. Then you get into the deal of who's got the most talent around them and all that kind of nonsense. Does Josh Allen have the same talent that Darnold has? But no, he absolutely, with another big-time performance, that's going to be the cherry on top, right? He's ascending, had a big one this last game, came back nicely from one bad interception, right, and responded, which is what you're looking for from your quarterback, that he doesn't get scared, he doesn't get skittish, and we're seeing it. I mean, earlier in this show, Ben Leber, the biggest Kirk Cousins fan outside of Paul Charchi and I know, said, I asked him point blank, is Darnold playing better than Cousins did 2 years ago when the Vikings made the playoffs? And he said, yes. He said, I'll even say that Darnold is playing better than Cousins was playing before he got hurt last year when he probably had his best stretch of football. So, no, if he has another one given the stage, all by yourself, on the road against the Lions, then, yeah, he's going to win some votes. And I don't know that he can win it, but I wouldn't rule anything out at that point if he does it. To me, he's already should be in the conversation. I felt he should be on the periphery at this point, but pretty close to it. What is it? I mean, now he's got the most 100-plus quarterback ratings games since like the 1950s or something. I mean, it's so. I don't think you're crazy for other reasons, but not this. This isn't one of them.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's some reassurance. And here, wouldn't it be a kind of cruel twist? Like if everything unfolds the way we described it, and he doesn't finish first or even second or third in MVP, you might blame KOC because he's viewed as this just unbelievable, the new Lombardi, and so he's going to take votes and siphon votes away from Sam Darnold because he's this genius play caller, which, hey, he's been great. He deserves all the praise that he gets, but actually it might be KOC's fault that Sam Darnold doesn't win MVP. How about that?
Well, in fact, I can't remember who the analyst was who said this. I have the quote in front of me. I want to read you this quote because it plays into all the debate nationally that's developed about whether the Vikings are obligated to find a way to bring Darnold back. And here was the comment. 99% of you thought Sam Darnold wasn't worth bleep before this year, but you don't want to recognize how masterful KOC has been in developing him and bringing out the best of him. Okay, J.J. McCarthy was about to make a push to start his rookie season too because of the coaching he is receiving in Minneapolis. The moral of that message seems to be that he's putting it really more. He's almost seemingly saying, well, KOC is the quarterback whisperer, and there's no reason to think that he can't do. In fact, Strahan said this post-game with Fox. He intimated that, well, no, you don't pay him whatever it takes because he can do the same thing with Daniel Jones if you want to wait on J.J. McCarthy. And I think that's getting a little bit extreme. I mean, maybe I'm not giving KOC enough credit because he certainly deserves a lot of credit for the way he's nurtured this guy. But I also think we can't forget Sam Darnold did come out of college considered to be a grade A talent, right? Huge arm, good athleticism. And he just didn't measure up, whether that was his fault or the infrastructure that he walked into on some bad teams.
Yeah, I believe that quote was Louis Riddick, I think, from ESPN.
Yes.
But yes, so here's where I stand on that as well. And I think I'm kind of along the lines with you on it is that, I've been around for a little while now. And I've been in locker rooms and I've watched teams, and I will say this, Kevin O'Connell absolutely deserves Coach of the Year. I think the Vikings on both sides of the ball are the best or one of the maybe top 2 or 3 with Kansas City and one or two others coach teams in the league. Every week they go in with really great game plans and really well prepared. And so he deserves all the flowers that he is getting in terms of the praise. I always just hesitate a little bit because sometimes I think we can just put too much on the coach and take away from the talent of the player. And it happens in basketball. Done it with Popovich and Brad Stevens and a few of these others that come along and they're cast as Svengalis who can do whatever they want. Like how great was Bill Belichick with Tom Brady? How great was he without him? Those are the kinds of things that are in the back of my mind. So he has done a fantastic job with Sam Darnold, putting him in positions to win, to maximize his talent. And I do think he would do a great job with J.J. McCarthy, but I do hesitate to go too over the top and say almost like what it feels like some people are saying it doesn't matter who you put in at quarterback there. KOC is going to have a top 5 offense and it's going to be great. I'd just be like, let's not diminish what we've seen from a pure physical ability standpoint of Sam Darnold this year, because some of the throws that he made yesterday were unbelievable, and he's done that all season long, squeezing it into tight windows, throwing guys open. He's been remarkable, as has Kevin O'Connell.
All right,
sure.
Let me finish with this. I have a bone to pick with you, and it's probably unfair because I don't think it's necessarily I can't necessarily attribute this to you. But I think I read this today. I'm pretty sure I read it. I don't think I made this up. The Athletic, your outfit, right, has a new sort of polling of, I guess it's people in sports management, of the best run organizations in sports, right? And if I did, I went back and reread the chart like 5 times because I couldn't believe my eyes. But I think they went 75 deep. Was it 75? Whatever the number was, the only local professional team not represented in the top 75, whatever it was, were the Minnesota Vikings. So did I misread that? How is that possible? Now I know again there's recency bias because the Vikings are having this incredible season, but the Chicago Bears are on the list ahead of the Minnesota Vikings. Do you know anything about this, or is it some other publication and it's not The Athletic?
No, I do think it is The Athletic, Dan, because I saw something on social media today. I'll admit I have not read it, so I don't know. how the voting was tabulated. I don't know who voted on it. I don't know any of that stuff. I'll have to dive into it a little bit more. But, yeah, I would be really skeptical of a list like that has the Chicago Bears on it and not the Minnesota Vikings, because the Vikings are a very well-run organization right now. They get all sorts of plaudits from players in the annual union voting. They are winning games at a high level. They have been throughout historically have had very few seasons that they've been just terrible. They've always been really competitive, even if they haven't won a Super Bowl. My guess is that championships must or championship appearances must factor in, because the Bears have been in a Super Bowl a couple of times since the Vikings have. I don't know, but I'll have to look at that, because I would have the same questions as you do if that's the case.
Yeah, I was, like I said, I think in this town, the Wolves were highest among the local teams. Yeah. I think the Twins might have been next. Now, again, you can argue the Twins issue is more ownership than it is, management, one could say. But I looked like, and then I saw the Bears, and I said, my God. I don't. Now, again, they're prisoner of whoever they're surveying, right? I mean, it's not like they were ranking them. It was a survey, but it's like, I don't know how you even begin to get there, but I did note that the Purple were not on there at all. And at that point, I said, I got to talk to Johnny.
The other thing I wonder is when the voting took place, because the Bears were a hot commodity going into the season.
That's true.
And, maybe this just took a while to tabulate and do, and then in the hindsight is a little bit clearer here. So maybe that's it. But
try to do some insighting. Yeah, I think you need to get some insighting on that for the next time we're on and explain it, because it didn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense to me. And I wanted to hold you responsible, even though you probably had nothing to do with it. That's how I roll. We appreciate
zero to do with that.
That's it. We'll talk next week as we prepare for first round bye. And then we wait for some team to come here and be sacrificed in the second round of the playoffs.
Woo! Let's go.
Yeah, that's all it takes,
Go
man.
Vikings.
It could be, and then we'll see you in New Orleans, correct?
I'll be there. Will you be there? Is the question.
God, yes. If the Vikings are in New Orleans, of course, we're all going to be there.
All right.
We might all have to drive. We might have to take a bus. Chris Hockey might have to drive us
all the way down the Mississippi.
That's it. It might have to actually come to that. I mean, it's all about the dollar at this point. Thanks, my friend. We'll talk soon. Happy New Year. Thanks, Johnny.
Same to you. Thanks, Dan.
Appreciate you. That's John Krasinski, the one and only. We've got a full half hour yet to go. And, this is the last show we're going to do on this program before the new year. So we do a bit on our program called Ode to a Dead Guy. I wanted to expand that out and sort of think back on a number of the major losses over the nationally and internationally speaking over the course of the last year that got our attention, and give those individuals their proper due. In some cases, actually, maybe they don't deserve proper due, but it's hard not to acknowledge their historical significance. Couple of segments on a very football-centric bumper-to-bumper program.
And now, it's time for Ode to a Dead Guy.
Well, news most recently breaking that Jimmy Carter passed away, former, of course, president of the United States. Interesting character study and even political study in that I think the perception of him when he was president was much worse than it is now. And it all, I think, depends on how you judge and what you base your judgments on. There was certainly, post his presidency, a great nobility to the approach that he took that I think both Republicans and Democrats could certainly appreciate. At that point, a civility that we have, many of us have learned to not take for granted any longer. I'll just leave it at that for the moment. But the list for this year goes beyond just him. There's some other names I wanted to get to as well that we owed at the time that they passed away, or at least commented on them. And I want to start with Bob Newhart, a former guest of the Bumper to Bumper program. Of course, a terrific career in stand-up comedy. He was that rare bird that made great, very popular record albums that were of his comedy, long before that became a fashionable thing. And then he went on to have a tremendous television career, TV sitcom career as well, especially in the Bob Newhart Show, but made appearances in many others. And Newhart, I think Newhart's brilliance was in his simplicity and his ability to just sort of make what seemed to be the mundane interesting, funny, and in most cases, extremely entertaining. And perhaps more than anything else, he is best known for creating the sort of one-sided phone conversation where you're hearing him carry on a phone conversation, and you learn what the other person is saying based on Newhart's unbelievable timing and responses. A great comedian, gone but not forgotten. And as I mentioned, a very gracious guest on this program as well. Another name I want to mention is that of James Earl Jones. We spent a lot of time when this story broke as well. I would argue that he literally developed one of the most distinct and iconic voices in this culture, in the American culture, in the last 50, 75 years at least. He died in September at the age of 93 years old. Career spanned 8 decades, Emmy Awards, Grammy Awards, Oscar and Tony Awards, Field of Dreams, Coming to America, Broadway productions, including August Wilson's Fences as well, of course, The Lion King, also the voice of Star Wars villain Darth Vader. And, of course, the great inspiration in the case of James Earl Jones is he overcame, a childhood stutter to become literally one of the most, well-known, distinctive voices that I can recall, that I think a lot of other people can recall as well. A couple other names I want to get to before. And by the way, if you have names that you think are worthy of this conversation, because we don't have a lot of time for it, hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. That, of course, is 64686. This is a name that maybe people would feel is kind of strange to be on this list, but I think is worthy of sort of one more look back. Dr. Ruth Westheimer. Are you too young to know that name?
She was the sex lady, right?
That's well put. That's exactly it.
Yeah, I remember seeing her on daytime talk shows and stuff like that.
4'7" woman who very routinely talked about orgasms and basically made it seem so clinical that people sort of were okay with it. But she brought, I would say, the time she did it. She died in July at the age of 96 years old. But she did it at a time where, it wasn't so easy for people to talk about this. And she was very, what's the term I would say? She was very entertaining in her approach. She sort of like broke down all the barriers, like this is stuff we can't talk about. And even though a lot of the stuff was clinical, she still had fun with it as well. And had great success. And so Westheimer was her last name, but she was Dr. Ruth. She did have a psychology degree. That's real. And she was on pretty much all the talk shows, right? I mean, she was very big on the talk show circuit for a number of years and had a very successful run as well. I'll put an athlete on the list here in this segment as well. His name is Willie Mays. And Willie Mays spent some time here in the Twin Cities in minor league baseball in St. Paul very briefly. I've said, being kind of old, that the most elegant baseball player I ever saw was Roberto Clemente. He was magic on a baseball diamond. The way he could move in the outfield, the cannon of an arm he had, throwing people out at the plate. He ran with this almost balletic grace from first to third base. Just a magnificently beautiful baseball player. An unbelievable guy, too, as well. Tragically died doing what? Trying to send rescue relief to his home country after a natural disaster. And the plane he was on, which we talked about with David Marinus, one of the great biographers, the Pulitzer Prize winner, who wrote a great book on Roberto Clemente, a plane that probably should never have taken off the ground because it was not very safe. That's the horrible way that he passed away. He's the most elegant baseball player, but the best baseball player I ever saw in person at Wrigley Field was, without a doubt, Willie Mays. Because Mays was, as most people talk about, could literally do anything on a baseball field. He could hit for power. He could run like a deer. He could make any play in the outfield. He, too, had a tremendous arm. He made probably the most famous catch in postseason history, the over-the-shoulder catch on Vic Wirtz, a play that you can look up and find the video of, and it's unbelievable. Willie Mays died June 18 at the age of 93 years old. The quote, it's an interesting quote from Wall Street Journal as they put together this attempt to salute those who passed away in the last calendar year. In 1979, Mays was quoted by Newsweek summing up what so many who saw him play believed. Quote, "I think I was the best baseball player I ever saw." And nobody got mad at him for saying it, because no point in being self-deprecating when you're as good and as exciting and as dynamic as to say, "Hey, kid" was. A couple other names as we wrap up the program. That is coming up in our final minutes on a Monday here on The Fan.
It's the Bumper to Bumper Show Wrap.
I want to thank an outstanding array of guests today. The Monday regulars did not disappoint at all. That includes a good half-hour conversation with Cam Bynum between 3:30 and 4 o'clock. Yeah, we covered all the dances, and we even tried to mix in some football as well. That'll be podcastable later tonight, we hope. In addition, Ben Leber joined between about 4:47, 4:50 or so, and 5:15. And Johnny Athletic with a good combo platter on the Wolves and the Vikings, Packers, and looking ahead to the Lions as well. He joined at about, as I said, 5:30. There's a lot of other names we could put on the list. Ricky Henderson, the late, great Quincy Jones, just a master of music. Working with, to me, the ultimate pairing when it comes to musical legends is Quincy Jones working with Frank Sinatra, and the degree to which talent recognizes talent, which they recognized in each other. And it was like about as brilliant a musical marriage as you can have in popular music. Terry Garr. The list goes on and on. Dickie Betts for me, because I'm such a big Allman Brothers guy. But I have to finish with the big redhead, Bill Walton, who passed away on May 27, 2024, and became such a great friend to this program. We've had, over the years, over the decades, we've been lucky enough to accrue a remarkable array of guests, especially national guests, which is not always the easiest thing to do on a local program in flyover country. And Walton developed into one of those guys who traditionally would chat with us Final Four weekend. And we did not have that opportunity the last year. He was already battling illness at that point. But it would become a treat that I think a lot of our listeners look forward to. And earlier, Max was talking about having Ron Johnson on, that basically you ask one question, you pick up, you put your feet up and you let Ron go. Walton was that to the 10th power. And the beauty of Walton, of course, was it would be digression built on digression upon another digression.
If you ever go to Houston, got to walk right, got to keep your hands deep in your pocket and your gun belt tight.
Where does that come from? Where does Walton summon up that particular reference and that particular lyric That was the beauty of Walton. No matter what the question was, he was going to take it down whatever direction that he wanted to take. And so, to a large extent, he became probably one of the favorite guests we had. And part of, I think, why people look forward to it was we didn't have him a lot. It was, like I said, if we were lucky, we'd have him once a year. We might have had one year where we got him a second time. I can't recall. And, of course, the one year where we had the Final Four here, we had him on location. He came to see us there as well. And what I was talking earlier about the James Earl Jones stutter. Bill Walton, and you heard it. Let me play it again.
If you ever go to Houston, got to walk right, got to keep your hands deep in your pocket and your gun belt tight.
No stutter there. He grew up with a stupendous stutter himself, and over a period of time worked his way out of that and became, I think, a part of the popular culture. Beyond what a lot of people tended to forget when he was on with us, he was one of the most magnificent basketball players I ever saw. And I believe would have, if he had stayed healthy in the pros, would be considered even today one of the top 10 players in the history of the game. He was that good. He was literally, I think, the second or third. To me, the three best college players of all time would be Bill Russell, and it would be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, then Lou Alcindor, and Bill Walton. Those were the three. But beyond the basketball, the cliche that we've all heard, I think, goes something like this. The world is less interesting with Bill Walton not in it. We miss him every day, and he was such a friend of this show, and he was so loyal to this program, and he surprised us every time we had him on. So we owed all, and many other individuals that we didn't even get to name today as we prepare for the end of the year 2024. We're out on this show tomorrow and Wednesday. Max is back with me Thursday and Friday, correct? That's the plan. There's going to be a lot of football for all the obvious reasons. I'm putting together a tremendous guest lineup above and beyond the regulars as well. So you'll get plenty of your fill when it comes to Vikings and Lions, the big game Sunday night. Thanks for helping it out, making it seamless today, Max. And we will tell everybody Happy New Year, and we'll talk to you later in the week.
You wake up, put on your Ray-Ban Meta glasses. You're living all in. You realize you need coffee. So you say,
"Hey, Meta, how do I make a latte?"
Brew 2 shots of espresso.
After Meta AI gets you caffeinated, you're ready for some beats.
Hey, Meta, play hip-hop music.
You head to meet some friends, but can't remember the place.
Hey, Meta, call Eva.
Ray-Ban Meta glasses, the next generation of AI glasses. Just say, "Hey, Meta," to harness the power of Meta AI. Shop now at meta.com/smartglasses.